And we're golden. We are golden. We're going to get rid of that. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thanks for being with me. We are going to talk about, is iridology a diagnostic tool? And Heather is ready to roll. Yes. And we've got Jamlau giving us some waves and things like that. So this is great. Thanks for interacting. I love it, love it, love it. Okay. Some of you are new to me. Some of you have been with me for a while, and I love having people who've been with me for a while, and I love new people too. So thank you. My name is Judith Cobb. I am a Master Herbalist, Natural Nutrition Clinical Practitioner, and a Certified Comprehensive Iridology Instructor. I am in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where we are having our second winter. It's been snowing for the last few days, not heavily, but it is snowing still. Will spring ever come? We hope so, because when it snows, it's gray skies. And if you do your geography and climatology research, you will find that where I live has usually more hours of sunshine than any other place on the face of the planet. And I do need that sunshine. I am half plant. I need my sunshine. Okay, so I'd love it if you'd let me know where you're from. We've heard from Heather, she's in PEI. Philson, I'd like to know where you're from. And those of you who are with me on Instagram, I want to know where you're from as well as we get going. It's fun to have that international group with us. And so please let me know where you're at. While you're doing that, we are going to dive in. Philson is from Toronto. Go Toronto, yay! Do you have snow in Toronto today? Just wondering. Okay, so we are going to talk in London, Ontario. Yes, Ontario's got two. We've got Maybrit, I hope I said that right, from Calgary. Yeah, Calgary. Yeah, we could meet for herbal tea one day maybe. All right, so great. This is wonderful. Katie says, sunny, very windy in Virginia. Way to go. Jody's with us too on Instagram. Okay, let's get going here. This is so fun, so fun. Is iridology a diagnostic tool? That is the question we need to ask today. Let's start with understanding what diagnosis means. Diagnosis means we are naming a disease. Hi, Jody on Instagram. Diagnosis, again, means we're naming a disease. So when we go to a doctor or to a naturopath, they run tests, they analyze the results, then they name a disease, right? We like that tag. We want that tag. We want to know, what is my problem? It is... We're going to call it this. Hi, Iman. Good to see you. Good to see you. So here's the challenge with naming diseases, though. So often when a disease is named, the treatment is based on the disease name. Now, that's maybe not a bad thing until we look at the fact that autopsies done, and this was reported in the British Medical Journal, volume 22, issue supplement 2, if you want to look it up. Right? If you want to look it up. When they've done autopsies on people that have died, they don't do them on living people, just saying. What they find is that based on the autopsy reports, 20% of the people had a misdiagnosis. They were being treated for the wrong disease. Anyone see a problem with that? Anyone see a problem with that? Yeah, right? I see a huge problem with that, because when you've had a disease name labeled on you and you wear that as a badge and it's in all of your medical files, it's nearly impossible to get rid of that label. Every doctor pretty much who looks at your files after that is going to go, oh, Dr. So-and-so said you have this. We'll just continue on. Very rarely will a doctor start from scratch and say, yeah, I don't know, you're not getting the results we want to see. This isn't quite fitting. Let's start over. So maybe in reality, we don't want to use iridology to name diseases, right? Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't. Because we know how hard it is to get rid of those labels. We know how easy it is to treat according to the label, and we want to avoid that. So we have to ask another question here beyond, is iridology a diagnostic tool? And that question is, what value does iridology have in assessing client needs and creating wellness programs? Is that a better question? What value does iridology have in assessing client needs and creating wellness programs? Yeah. Yes, Heather says that is a better question. Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. So let's look at some iris photos to see what we see. We're going to look at, my camera is in my way here. I just need to get that to where I can actually see, and it's not going to let me. Okay. We're going to look at some cases that have had a medical diagnosis. We're going to look at a case of ADHD, right? We all know somebody somewhere, child or adult, who's got ADHD or ADD as a label, right? They may or may not be responding well to the meds, and some of those meds are pretty scary. We're going to look at 4 cases of polycystic ovarian syndrome, because I love working with PCOS. And we're going to look at 1 case of sphincter of Oddi dysfunction. Have you ever heard of sphincter of Oddi? If you've been with me for several months, you will have. If you have heard of it before, let's have you raise your hand if you've heard of sphincter of Oddi. So just before we do that, oh no, we're going to dive right in. All right. Hi, Satori. Good to see you there on Instagram with us. Okay, here's our 10-year-old boy. When we look at this, we need to ask again, just before we look at this, what is the value of constitutional iridology as an assessment tool in a holistic wellness practice? Now, I very specifically said constitutional iridology because it's different from Jensenian, it's different from Rayid, it's different from behavioral, it's different from emotional. Okay, so we've got lots of types of iridology out there. This one is different. This doesn't matter if you're a herbalist or a nutrition coach or a naturopath or an aromatherapist. I want you to stay with me for this next probably about 30 to 40 minutes to see what kinds of insights we can gain from doing a constitutional iridology assessment with a client. Here's why this is important. I need you to really listen to this very carefully. You're going to see online that there are a lot of posts from a lot of people. They're saying, go ahead and post your iris photos here and I will do an analysis for you. And in those groups, you'll see people posting photos saying, tell me what's wrong and tell me what I can do about it. Or please tell me what you see and what supplements I should take or what foods I should eat. Okay, I'm going to tell you that that's not useful. None of that is useful. Additionally, I see a lot of iridologists actually diagnosing and prescribing from those photos without any background information at all. Iridology is not a crystal ball. It's not a party game. It's an assessment tool. So the answer to the question, is iridology a diagnostic tool, is no. Capital letters, bold it, put asterisks around it and exclamation points. It is not a diagnostic tool. We actually cannot diagnose anything at all from the eyes. The eyes are, and we use the eyes, the irides specifically, as an assessment tool. The irides teach us what questions to ask. They don't give us the answers. They don't give us the names of diseases on their own. They don't even tell us what recommendations to make for a client. So we're going to look at these 6 cases and we're going to see what the eyes tell us and how that informs the questions we want to ask and how that further informs the possible suggestions we want to make. Okay, so when we look at these eyes, and these are a 10-year-old boy, you're going to see we've got rings going around and around and around, and we've got lines radiating outward. This is very, very common to see in people who have ADD or ADHD. Now, that doesn't mean that every person who has these has ADD, ADHD. Just the vast majority of people who do have them have ADD, ADHD. So when we look at these markers together, and these do not mean parasites, these do not mean nervous breakdown. Just saying, if you see that on a website or on a social media page, you know better now. These markers together suggest that this person burns through their B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium really quickly. When they are properly nourished for their needs, they do well. And they like to have to-do lists. They like to be productive. They like to have a direction in what they're doing. They love to accomplish things. When they don't have those nutrients, what we find is they are easily distracted, they are short-tempered, they don't focus well. So again, when we see these markers, it's not that this person, that we can say this person has ADD, ADHD. It's that we can ask questions. How is your attention span? How well do you sleep? What happens? What kinds of things do you enjoy doing that hold your attention? What's your stress level like? How do you cope with stress? Those things all teach us about this person's chemistry, and we understand that we need to ask those questions because we see these markers in the eyes. Okay. As this child is learning in school, hi Peggy, good to see you on Instagram. As we see these people in clinic, we need to understand that they learn differently. They learn through their body. You put this child behind a desk and tell him to sit still, fold his hands on his desk and look at the teacher and listen. He's going to be good for about 4.5 seconds, right? On the other hand, give him a bendable, posable figure. Give him a ball of Play-Doh or plasticine. Give him some Lego to build with at his desk that's, that you can tie into the lesson somehow. He's going to remember more of what you say than you ever thought possible. He's not going to be looking at the teacher. You're going to think he's totally distracted. But what he's doing is he's using that kinesthetic input that his body wants to be always doing to actually calm his mind so that he can listen. He can't as an adult. Don't put him behind a desk. Don't put him behind a desk. Put him in a classroom. Give him the role of being the phys ed teacher. Right? Give him the role of being the drama teacher. Give him a role that makes him be physically active, and give him all of the children who have ADD, ADHD diagnoses because he understands them. And he knows they need to be kept busy. These are the children that if you line them up to go from one room to another one, this is the one that's pulling somebody's hair, that's nudging somebody, that's touching the wall all the way as they go down. Give him the box of materials to carry. Give him something to be physically involved. That's going to help him, but give him also B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. Give him the nutrients to feed his nervous system. And then I don't care what label he's got. That's all going to help him significantly, right? We can avoid him ever being labeled. Okay. Now there are a lot of other imbalances, and I know this, that can contribute to ADD and ADHD, but understanding the iris markers gives us a huge bit of insight as to what these people have going on chemically in their body, what they're inherently predisposed to. Remember, the iris is what has been passed down from the last 3 to 4 generations, and what this person's personality is like. Here is one of my clients who came in with a diagnosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome. So looking at her eyes, what I needed to understand as I looked at these eyes is, why does she have that diagnosis? What's going on here? If you're familiar with PCOS, you know that it's a part of syndrome X for women, and that their blood sugars are out of balance, and that throws their hormones out of balance, and then it throws their menstrual cycles out of balance, and then they don't get pregnant, right, when they want to, and lots of repercussions down the road. So we're going to look at a lot of different eyes here to show us different things. Now, this client came to me with a history of weight gain and menstrual cycles that were getting further and further apart. Those two things are enough to make me think in my head polycystic ovarian syndrome. Can I actually say that to her? Absolutely not. I'm not allowed to diagnose or prescribe. But she had already come in with that diagnosis from the doctor, so she was coming in to see me to learn about foods and diet and supplements, which was great. Her eyes totally confirm that she could be PCOS. She didn't have to be, but she could be. So what we did was we fixed her diet. Her diet was super high carb, super high refined carb, When we got her diet under control, cleaned it up, got rid of the junk food, got her the protein, got her the leafy greens, got her the low carb vegetables, got her being physically active, which was a new experience for her. Her menstrual cycle totally settled into a really nice pattern, and she has since, by maintaining that, had 4 successful pregnancies. All right, so that was very cool that she, with that PCOS diagnosis and that predisposition towards glandular imbalance, towards hormone imbalance, was able to rein it in because we understood from looking at her eyes what was going on. Here's another one of my PCOS clients. This is a female, mid-30s, Asian descent. And she came in saying that she and her husband had been trying to get pregnant for 3 years. They'd had no success. And they'd been to the fertility clinic. The fertility clinic had given them Clomid and metformin. Nothing else, nothing. Her menstrual cycles were about 75 to 90 days apart. That alone says, if you look in the medical books, that alone is the diagnosis of PCOS. You see that symptom, you know in your head that's what they've got. You can send your client to a website to say, go to this website and see what it says about what's going on, right? So in her eyes, she has, notice her eyes are different. Look at this. This client has these markings that taught us about glandular imbalance. This client doesn't have those. So how could I use this eye to inform my decisions about what we suggested? Well, the first thing I needed to look at was, how does she handle stress? Remember, this is what the little boy with ADD and ADHD had, right? He had these rings, right? So how does she handle stress? Well, she needs her B vitamins to help her handle stress better. She's an accountant. She gets stressed. Her husband is a sweet man. He came to every appointment with her. And I asked, what happens when she gets stressed? And he said, he's also an accountant. He said, when she comes home and I know she's had a rough day at the office, I make supper for her, I feed her, and then I leave her alone because she doesn't want to be around anybody. I thought, that's an insightful man, right? Good for him for being so nurturing. And so I could tell that from her eyes that she had a predisposition to not handling her B's properly. And the problem with that, if she's not handling her B's properly, when your B's are unbalanced, it often leads to carbohydrate imbalances and craving carbs. And I asked her, do you crave carbs? And she was, oh yeah. Breakfast was a sweet roll and a glass of juice. Talk about carb overload, right? So we got her using B vitamins in the right form for her body. We got her fixing her diet. We added walking. Her favorite sport until that point in time was watching her husband play competitive soccer, watching him, not playing. So we had to get her walking. She was brilliant. We got her cycles settled down to about 32 to 35 days. It took us 18 months and a little bit of other playing with some different supplements to help her liver, because she's got all the indications that her liver wants to run the show and in some cases ruin the show. So we did a little bit of liver work. She got pregnant. She had a very successful pregnancy and delivered a 7-pound baby boy at term, which is highly unusual for someone who's had a PCOS diagnosis and a type 2 diabetes diagnosis from her doctor. Very unusual to go to term. A 3-hour labor delivery from start to finish. All right, let's look at another case of of PCOS. So I'm going to move my phone a little bit closer for those of you on Instagram. All right, this eye has some similarities to the previous side, but I want to show a significant difference. Do you see coming around here? We see where it's light and then it's dark. But on this eye instead, can you see there's actually a fiber that comes around here? Right now, there's something going on with that fiber that tells us that this client probably has issues processing her sugars and her carbs properly. So she's 20 years old. She's talking about gaining weight. She wants help to not gain weight anymore. What 20-year-old wants to keep gaining weight? And so I asked her about her diet. She was a university student eating on the campus food plan, which is cafeteria food, which is usually cheap carb. right? So I asked her, what are you eating? And she described it. And I'm going, oh my goodness. So then I had to ask her, how far apart are your menstrual cycles? She said, have them regularly. I said, what do you mean regularly? One a month? She said, yeah, one a month, but they're about 4 weeks late every month. Huh, 1 a month plus 4 weeks. So does that mean you're having one every 2 months? And she said, yeah, one every 2 months, but they're really regular. So as I looked at her eyes, I saw this. I'm going to move my phone closer for those of you on Instagram. This is something you won't see unless you've got some really good magnification equipment. Do you see how this thread lifts right off the surface of the eye? Like we could slip a really fine needle right under this, right? And comes around again. And actually right here, it lifts off the surface of the eye again. That is a classic marker that suggests an inherent predisposition to not handling carbs properly, to moving towards hyperglycemia, type 2 diabetes, full-blown diabetes. That's our warning sign that she's got the genes to do that. So what did we have to do with her? We had to get her off the campus meal plan. Right, we had to get her, she wasn't exercising, no physical activity. We had to get her to actually consider and to start walking the 1.5 miles to the grocery store, to buy food, to come home and prepare in the kitchen in her apartment, which she was willing to do. So twice a week she'd make that trip, but I encouraged her to walk a lot more than that. We had her eating leafy greens, good proteins and things like that, and we got her cycles down to where they belonged, and the weight started coming off. So all of these last 3 eyes that we've looked at have been vastly different, and they each gave us insights as to why the woman's body was behaving the way it was. So when we understand what we see in the eyes, again, it teaches us what questions to ask. It guides us then as to the kinds of direction we need to give our client. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Rochelle. Hi, Type 1. Good to see you on Instagram. Here's our last PCOS pregnancy client. No, actually, she wasn't PCOS. She was just infertility. Mid-30s. She'd been trying to get pregnant for a year. She'd had absolutely no luck. She has a few tiny markers in her eyes that suggest that she might have a problem with the MTHFR defect. So that means she lacks the enzyme in her liver to properly work with some of her B vitamins. The problem is when those B vitamins aren't properly managed, it leads to PCOS and infertility. So she's got some of the same kinds of markings we've seen in one of the other PCOS eyes. And she's also got some markings that suggest MTHFR. We worked together, and I worked with that premise in the back of my mind, thinking, I think she's got this problem. Never said it, wouldn't say that to her. That would be a diagnosis, right? But I did describe, I said, you know, I wonder if you handle your B vitamins properly. This is what I suspect is happening, but I did not give it a name. And so from there, we worked together for about 6 months. Her cycles were good. Her diet was amazing. Like, I want to live with her and eat in her kitchen, right? Amazing. And partway through her pregnancy, she decided to do 23andMe. Now, this is a woman who tends to be very anxious about a lot of things. And so she got this 23andMe report back. She sent me an email and attached all of her 23andMe reports. And the email was just vibrating with anxiety. It was like, oh my goodness, I think my computer screen was vibrating from it too. She had tested positive genetically for MTHFR. And she was panicking. Will my baby be okay? How is my baby going to be affected? What does this mean? Is my pregnancy going to finish fine? She was so anxious. And I was able to say, I need you to take about 3 really deep breaths. And I just need you to listen. Just listen. Remember in our first appointment, I said I needed you to take these special B vitamins. That was because I suspected this all along. I've got your back. I've had your back since the very first appointment. It's good. Just relax. Everything that can be done has been done. And with that, she kind of went and calmed down, right? So that is so important. I saw the tiny marking that made me think, I suspect, and we went with that. So we can't tell from eyes specifically who has PCOS or not, but we can see indicators that suggest that the body wants to work metabolically in a certain way. And when we understand that, when we understand what questions to ask because of that, then we understand what recommendations to make. Maybe the person is actually doing everything perfectly right. So the markings we see in the eyes suggest an inherent predisposition, but because they're doing things that are all right, they are helping their body to function absolutely well. And they don't need us to do anything else with them. And that's wonderful. I mean, this woman had such an amazing diet. Hi, Winter Proctor, good to see you. But the one thing that was missing was she was using a prenatal vitamin that was a decent brand, but it didn't have the B's in the right format. And that's a critical piece when we're working with MTHFR possibly, and when we're working with fertility issues. Okay, sphincter of Oddi. How many of you have heard of sphincter of Oddi? If you have, I want you to wave at me, raise your hand. Have you heard of sphincter of Oddi before? This is a really interesting situation. This is a client, actually I'll tell you what sphincter of Oddi is first, and then we're gonna look at his eyes. Sphincter of Oddi is a sphincter right here. It joins the liver, gallbladder, the common bile duct, and the pancreatic duct. And that becomes the common bile duct right here to the small intestine. So that when you eat foods that are fatty, the gallbladder goes squirt and sends bile down. So bile starts in the liver, goes into the gallbladder, gets squirted to the small intestine when it's needed. When you're eating something high carb, the pancreas shoots enzymes to finish carb digestion into the small intestine as well. When the gallbladder is removed, the hepatic bile ducts no longer have a place to shoot the bile to be stored and concentrated. Now the bile just constantly comes down, and it becomes the sphincter of Oddi's job to absolutely regulate the bile. But in many cases, well over half of the cases, when the gallbladder is removed, for some bizarre reason, and we don't know why yet, the sphincter of Oddi starts to misbehave. And it either spasms or it develops scar tissue. And the sphincter of Oddi opening becomes smaller and smaller. So we get bile backing up, intense pain when this sphincter tries to do something different. Hi, Cactus, good to see you. And we end up with difficulties. So, male client, age 58. He's been a client of mine for about 10 or 12 years. And then for various reasons, the employment market here in Calgary has been really getting worse and worse and worse over the last few years. And so he lost a job. His job had to find a lower paying job and was unable to come in to see me for a few years. And in those few years, he ended up with gallbladder issues, and then he went and had his gallbladder removed. And after his gallbladder had been removed is when he started to have more problems, and he came to see me. Now, I want you to notice that in the eyes, we see right in about here, this is where we're going to see gallbladder indicators. And we see that inherently he's predisposed to some gallbladder issues, but there's nothing in here that says that he's had his gallbladder out. The eye does not change based on surgery or trauma, unless it's a trauma to the eye, of course. But the eye is not going to register a trauma to the body. Okay, so we don't see an indication here of surgery. We do see that there is a predisposition to gallbladder, but now he's got sphincter of Oddi spasms. So sphincter of Oddi, again, doesn't have a specific point in the iris. If it did, it would be a pinpoint, and it would be impossible for us to accurately say, there, that little dot right there is sphincter of Oddi, right? Impossible. So, and if it did, that would also be a very medical allopathic assessment, not a constitutional iridology assessment. So the liver gallbladder region, gallbladder sits up in here, and the liver sits down in here in the eye. And we see a slight marking for an inherent gallbladder. we see a bit of stuff in here that suggests maybe a slight risk to something livery, but we aren't able to diagnose anything specific to sphincter Avati. The pigments in the iris, again, suggest an inherent predisposition to gallbladder issues, but it doesn't necessarily mean gallstones. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to have his gallbladder out. When we add the layer of information that teaches that gallstones are the result of unresolved anger, and I know this fellow really well, I've worked with him for several years, he is really mellow on the outside. He looks like he's easygoing, he's polite, he's kind, I mean, he's gentlemanly, right? He's the kind of a man that will hold the door open for a woman. He'll offer to carry packages for her. He's a lovely, lovely man. His wife lucked out getting him, I'll tell you. And she deserves him. She's wonderful too. But he's really nice at his own expense. He swallows his anger. When something's bugging him, he stuffs it, puts on a smile, and he's nice. He doesn't vent that anger anywhere. That anger stores up, and that is what causes, that's the emotional root of gallstones. Okay, so sphincter Avati issues often follow gallbladder removal. There's no iris marker for that, but we do see that predisposition towards a gallbladder imbalance. So can we diagnose sphincter Avati? Can we diagnose gallstones? Absolutely not. But when we see that we have these markers in his eye that suggest liver might want to have some issues and gallbladder might want to have some issues, that directs the questions we want to ask. Not just questions about, are you aware of any gallbladder issues? Are you aware of any liver issues? But also, how do you handle anger? What happens with anger? I was speaking with a client yesterday who is being investigated for gallstones and all that kind of stuff. And we had talked about this gallbladder anger thing a while back, like probably 4 or 5 years ago. And she was saying in the office as we were talking, I don't have anger issues. I said, okay, but just be aware. A few days later, she said she was talking to a friend and she was talking about how her boss had undercut her on something that was really significant and important and just totally shut her down on a project they were working on. And we're talking, this is years after this event had actually happened. And she said, I felt my blood pressure going up. I felt my face turning red. And I went, oh my goodness, I've got stored anger that's not resolved. I've got to work on this, right? So we're often not even aware we're stuffing anger. All right. So where does that really all leave us? Where does it leave us? Iridology is an assessment tool. It points the way to the questions we should ask. When we combine iridology with the symptoms the client has brought in, that guides further the questions we ask. It guides further the recommendations we should make. And iridology simply teaches us about the inherent potentials in the body. It's not diagnostic. People can have problems in their health and in their body in areas that the eyes don't think they should, because we can earn the right to have those problems. You eat enough junk food, your body's going to rebel, right? So we need to keep that in mind, that iridology is not diagnostic. For the past several years, I've been teaching wellness practitioners like you the art and science of iridology. You can tell I'm passionate. I love this. This is just, it makes my heart sing. It makes me vibrate with wonderful energy when I get to share what I know about iridology. Registration for the next start dates of the course, Confident Nutritionist Iridology, are coming up. Actually, registration's open and the course is starting in a couple of weeks, about 2 weeks. I'd like to share a few of the details of the course with you, but I'm not going to share much with you right now because that's not what you came here today for. Here's what I'm going to share with you. Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology is the only, and I know this because I scout out the internet and I look for competition, right? That's good marketing. It's the only live, online, mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing, and I might even say while enhancing client care. When you do iridology the way I teach it, it saves time in your clinical appointments. We do that so that practitioners can stop working unpaid overtime developing their client programs. They can stop overwhelming their clients with programs that are just simply not doable. We do it because it helps them to create programs that will increase client compliance, increase client success, and encourage long-term client relationships. I've done the math with some of my clients. I had a client come in a couple of weeks ago, and I've been seeing her again for about the past year and a half, but we just did the math. She's been a client for 38 years. How would you feel to have a client that was coming back and work with you for 5 or 6 or 8 appointments, and then they go and they work on their stuff for a couple of years, and then they come back for more, another 5 or 6 sessions, and then they go and work, but they keep coming back. I've also got clients now that are 3rd generation, where I helped the moms when they were pregnant, and then I helped them with their babies, and those babies are now adults having their own babies. So that's very cool. That's long-term retention, and that's what doing dynamic iridology the way I teach it to you can help you do. If you would like to know more, I'm going to encourage you to hop on over to iridology.education/webinar. And on Saturday, April 11th at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, and you can see all the other time zones there, we're going to do an info webinar about the course. We're going to outline who it's for, how it will benefit them, you in your practice, how it will benefit your clients. We're going to talk about everything you get in the scope of the course, the learning materials, the support, the mentoring. We're going to talk about tuition and payment plans as well, all of it. So if you want to know more about the program, hop on over to iridology.education/webinar and join me. It'll be a 90 minute to 2 hour webinar for me to give you all of the information, as well as 4 key things that you can start doing in your business right now to help you be more efficient and more effective for your clients. All right, so that's coming up, and I really encourage you, if you are a practitioner, if you're finding that you're struggling a little bit because you're spending too much time creating programs, if you're finding your clients don't come back for more than 2 sessions, if you're finding that even with the downturn in the economy that we're all experiencing right now, that you need something to help you do better, to increase your income, increase your client retention, you need to be on this webinar. And so I hope to see you there. And I've had a lot of fun working with you today. I hope you have too. Just before we wrap up, just want to know, any questions? Anything that I can do for you right now? I know I've seen a lot of familiar names popping on to Instagram. So good to see familiar names, and certainly on the webinar as well. It's lovely to see familiar names. And just know that I'm here to be of service, and I want you to have massive success. Philson says, thank you, Judith. You are welcome. Philson is signing up for the webinar on April 11th. Wonderful, wonderful. Look forward to seeing you there, Philson. Excellent. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Maybrit says, thank you so much. Can you see diabetes type 1 in iridology? You cannot diagnose anything from the eyes type 1. You can see certain markers that suggest a predisposition to it, but you cannot see anything that definitely names a disease. Heather says, all good. I missed you last night for me, but I will join you on the 11th. Yes, look forward to seeing you there, Heather. Wonderful. So type 1, did that answer your question? There are no markers in the eyes that say definitively what the problem is. What I will tell you is that a medical doctor can diagnose type 1 from looking at the eyes, but they're not looking at the iris. They're looking at the retina. They're looking at the blood flow in the retina. And that is how even an eye doctor can diagnose diabetes. Okay, but looking at the iris, no, we don't see that. Awesome. Fabulous. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up for today. I look forward to seeing many of you on Saturday, April 11th, Australia. I apologize. 1 a.m. Sunday morning's not a great time for you, but join us if you can. It'll well be worth your while. We'll see you again. Take good care. We'll actually see you Wednesday, 11 a.m., same time, same place, like here on Instagram, webinars, whatever. However you're following me, we'll do another little live event then. See you then. Take care. Bye for now.